The moment the lawyer read the final line of my mother-in-law's will, my husband stopped breathing. His face went blank like someone just unplugged him from reality. And that's when I realized her last revenge move wasn't aimed at me. It was aimed at her own son. I'll never forget how quiet that conference room was. Not sad funeral quiet, but the kind of quiet that just hums with tension, like everyone is waiting for a bomb to go off and trying to guess who's holding the detonator. We were seated around a polished mahogany table in the attorney's office downtown. The smell of leather chairs and old paper mixing with stale coffee nobody was touching. There were 4 of us. Me, my husband Mark, his sister Ashley, and their mother's longtime attorney. Mr. Collins, his reading glasses sat halfway down his nose, and he kept clearing his throat like every sentence was heavier than the last. And honestly, I'd been married to Mark for 15 years, long enough to know when he was pretending to be calm. His knee bounced under the table, his jaw tightened, his hands rested palms down, fingers splayed like he needed to anchor himself to the world or he'd drift off into space from the outside. You'd think this was a pretty standard will reading. Investments, the house, business shares, bank accounts, the whole respectable old money family checklists. Mark's mom had built a quiet empire over 5 decades, small manufacturing, real estate rentals, a family business that made more money than she ever bragged about. Mark was the golden child, the one she groomed to inherit, the one who'd carried the legacy everyone loved to whisper about at holidays. Me. I was the wife, solid, dependable, approachable, nice enough, the kind of person old family friends looked at with quiet approval because I didn't rock the boat or embarrass anyone at events. But here's the thing nobody ever said out loud. Mark wasn't the golden child because he was good. He was the golden child because he performed well. And his mom, she noticed everything. Per her instructions, we'll begin with the primary estate divisions, Mr. Collins said, glancing at us like we were his students. This includes the residence at Ridgewood, the joint investments portfolio, and the controlling shares of Winstonbury Manufacturing. Mark leaned back in his chair with the confidence of a man who already knew the final score. Ashley crossed her legs and folded her arms, probably rehearsing her inevitable disappointment. As listed, Collins continued, the bulk of these assets are designated to her son, Mark Winston. Ashley didn't even sigh. She just stared ahead, this resigned little half-smile like, yep, figures. I had my own allocation too, more generous than most in-laws ever get. Enough to be comfortable, but not enough to change the balance of power. Then Collins paused, not the fake pause lawyers do to sound dramatic. This was a real one, awkward, long, careful. T adjusted his glasses. Then he opened a separate folder, not the crisp white legal binder with tabs and signatures, a worn, navy blue folder that looked hand-labeled and private. Suddenly Mark wasn't reclined anymore. He leaned forward. There is, Collins said slowly, one special clause. This clause supersedes all previous allocations of property and inheritance. Ashley blinked. I felt my throat tighten. Mark's knees stopped bouncing. Collins continued, reading directly from the paper. His voice didn't sound like a lawyer anymore. It sounded like someone tiptoeing across a frozen lake. This clause may be triggered only under specific circumstances, as outlined by the deceased. He cleared his throat again. His hand trembled slightly. If certain moral conditions have been violated by my son, Mark, moral conditions, I felt that punch in my part dread, 1 part déjà vu, 1 part toxic curiosity. My mind spun 1,000 miles a second, cataloging every argument, every late night at the office, every second I spent staring at the back of Mark's locked phone. Mark's face twitched, just once. Just enough for me to see it. Ashley looked, from Mark to Collins, back to Mark, like she knew something, or suspected something, or hoped for something. Collins exhaled through his nose, bracing. The clause continues. In the event my son is proven to have breached the vows he swore to his wife during their marriage, specifically through acts of infidelity, emotional or physical, then the entirety of my estate shall be reassigned to his wife. Silent. Not a breath, not a shuffle, nothing, in lieu of him. The words sat in the room like a ghost. I didn't even look at Mark at first. I was too busy processing what I'd just heard. Infidelity, proof, entire estate transferred. My brain was firing like a slot machine and every possibility was terrible. Then I looked at him, and that was the moment everything clicked into place. Mark's skin went gray, his pupils shrank, his mouth opened for a half second like he wanted to object, but no sound came out. Not anger, not confusion, not amusement, fear, real, honest, unfiltered fear. Ashley leaned back in her chair like she'd just been given the front row ticket to the best drama of her life. She crossed her arms tighter, hiding a tiny smirk. Colen's, looking genuinely apologetic. Read the final line of the clause exactly as written. If it is proven that my son Mark has been unfaithful to his wife at any point during their marriage, his entire inheritance will be transferred to her instead. The room was still dead silent when Collins folded the paper, but Mark was already sweating through his collar, and the way he avoided looking at me, like eye contact itself might kill him, told me everything I needed to know. And here's the messed up part. I had no idea what his mother knew, or how long she'd been planning her final move against her own son. If you'd asked me 15 years ago whether I ever pictured myself sitting in a lawyer's office listening to a dead woman blow up her son's life, I would have laughed and told you I married the nicest man alive. The kind of guy who opened doors, sent flowers for no reason, remembered my coffee order, and made me feel like I'd finally stumbled into a rom-com. After years of dating jerks with commitment issues, I met Mark when I was 26 and stupidly optimistic. He walked into the marketing firm I worked at, all confident and perfect hair, the kind of guy who shakes your hand like he already knows you're going to like him. And Yafini did. He had that effortless charm some people are just born with, the kind that makes baristas remember your name and bosses assume you're competent before you've even proven it. We started dating fast, the kind of fast where your friends raise eyebrows but still root for you. Weekend trips, rooftop dinners, late night "I think I'm falling for you" conversations whispered under blankets. I mistook speed for passion and passion for compatibility, which is how a lot of women end up married before they really ask the hard questions. And Mark, he sold the fantasy flawlessly, at least in the beginning. Meeting his mom was where the cracks started. She was polite, very polite, too polite. The kind of politeness that felt like you were being scanned for defects she'd bring up later. In private, her handshake lingered 1 second too long. Her eyes catalogued, weighed, and sorted me like I was an applicant competing for a job I didn't even know I'd applied for. During one of those early dinners, she pulled Mark aside in the kitchen for a quick second. I wasn't meant to hear it, but thin walls and tiled floors are unforgiving. "Yes, she's lovely," she whispered, "but lovely doesn't protect a family name." That was the first time I realized I wasn't marrying just a man. I was marrying into a legacy, and his mother was the gatekeeper. Still, she didn't forbid it. She didn't sabotage it. She did something worth. She tolerated me. Because tolerance keeps you close enough to monitor. The wedding went off without drama, at least as far as anyone could tell. Photos looked like a magazine spread. Everyone smiled. Even his mother managed a tight grin in most of them. But marriage does what marriage always does. It reveals. Mark started staying later at work. Not all the time. Just enough to normalize it. Quarter-end crunch. Client deadlines. Working with the Asian market time zones are brutal. Logical excuses with just enough business buzzwords to shut down suspicion. His mother noticed too. She never said outright that she suspected him of lying, not then. Instead, she did something far more strategic. She pulled me into her confidence slowly, drip by drip. Once, she told me, men raised for success often assume fidelity is optional. Don't let him bully you into silence. Another time over tea. If he ever cheats, you take him for everything. You hear me? I laughed awkwardly like she was joking, and she stared at me with this deadpan expression that said, "Sweetheart, I don't joke about betrayal." At the time, I just chalked it up to her history. Rumor had it Mark's dad had stepped out during their marriage, quietly, discreetly, but enough that people whispered about it at country club dinners until the whispers became common knowledge. You'd think that kind of betrayal would make someone protective of their son. But for her, it made loyalty into a religion, and cheating, forgivable heresy? What I didn't understand then was that she wasn't just preparing me, she was documenting him. There was one night 3 years into our marriage where the red flags stopped being cute quirks and became alarms. Mark came home at 1:17 a.m., reeking of expensive perfume that didn't belong to me, with that bleary don't start look men wear when they've rehearsed excuses in the car. I confronted him softly at first. He snapped hard instantly. Paraño, you're becoming like my mother. Don't turn into that kind of wife. I remember standing there barefoot on the kitchen tile, holding a half-washed wine glass, wondering how trust could shatter quietly without anyone screaming. The next morning, he brought me flowers and acted like nothing happened. I let it go because letting it go felt easier than digging deeper. That was how the pattern formed. Suspect, gaslight, apologize, reset, repeat. But here's the mid-story twist nobody expects. His mother wasn't on his side, not anymore. Every time I mentioned one of his disappearing acts or business trips, her eyes narrowed, not at me, at him. She'd ask follow-up questions, little details, specific things. When did he say he was gone? Did he call first or text? Did he mention who else was there? Those weren't gossip questions. Those were investigative questions. And the more questions she asked, the more Mark avoided her. When she got sick, really sick, everything shifted. Suddenly, I was the one taking her to appointments, picking up prescriptions, sitting through long chemo days while Mark claimed he couldn't take time off work. During those hours, she saw, not in a sentimental way, in a strategic way, like passing information to the only person she trusted to use it. One afternoon, after radiation, she grabbed my wrist with surprising strength and said, "Whatever happens, I'll make sure you're okay." I thought she meant emotionally. I thought she meant she liked me finally. I didn't realize she meant it legally. She asked questions about his trips again. She even asked me to repeat a specific date. I didn't know why then. I do now. She didn't hate her son. She just didn't trust him to be a decent husband. And unlike most mothers, she wasn't willing to look the other way just because he shared her DNA. When she passed, Mark cried like a grieving son. But at the wake, he was on his phone, constantly, thumb scrolling, texting, deleting, typing again, not mourning, managing, and the person he kept messaging, let's just say their contact photo wasn't a business logo. And as I watched him, standing beside his mother's casket, tapping out secrets with his thumb, something inside me shifted for good. Back then, I thought she just wanted to protect me from being hurt. I had no idea she was protecting me from him even after she was gone. People always say cheating doesn't happen overnight. They're wrong. Cheating absolutely can happen overnight. What doesn't happen overnight is the fallout. That part drags through years of doubt and denial like a wounded animal crawling across broken glass, refusing to die. After his mother passed, Mark changed in a way I could actually measure. Less eye contact, more emergencies, more overtime, more phone calls were taken in the garage with the door shut and the car engine running out the drive, just to create noise so I couldn't hear. He'd come home smelling like perfume I didn't own, or sweat, or soap he didn't use. Tiny details that only matter when you're already suspicious. Before you suspect, you just ignore things like that. After you suspect, every hair on your body becomes a lie detector. The first undeniable sign came in the form of a hotel receipt. And the thing that really killed me, I wasn't snooping. I wasn't digging through pockets or phones or email accounts. It was sitting on the kitchen counter like someone had set it there by accident. A single glossy slip tucked inside a takeout bag from a sushi place he never liked. 2 nights, 1 king bed, concierge charges, chocolate-covered strawberries. Plenty of reasons he could never explain even though he tried. He stood there in our kitchen with his hands in the air like a man surrendering to a cop in a movie scene. Voice steady, eyes cold. It was for a work event. We got stuck. There were no double rooms left. Stop acting insecure. Just like that, the narrative flipped. My evidence became my weakness. His lies became my crazy. I hated how well he could do that. But that wasn't the thing that broke me. The thing that broke me was how easy it was to believe him when I desperately wanted to. Because here's a hard truth women don't talk about. Sometimes we'd rather be lied to than lose the version of life we built in our heads. After the hotel incident, Things escalated, slowly at first, then faster, like someone gradually turning up the volume until it reaches a scream. There was the second phone he claimed was for international clients. Then the number saved under Derek Work texted him, "I miss you at 10:42 p.m. Then more late meetings, surprise business trips, new clothes, gym sessions, every cliche in the handbook. Whenever I confronted him, he'd react with that perfect blend of indignation and exhaustion men use when they need you to doubt yourself. You're becoming like my mother. You're obsessed. You're losing it." The gaslighting wasn't even inventive. It's just effective. He didn't need creativity to manipulate me. He just needed my silence. And for a while, he got it. I didn't leave. I didn't hire a pie. I didn't tell my friends. I didn't even write in a journal, because writing makes things real. And I wasn't ready for reality. Then came the mid-story twist. One night, after weeks of tension so thick you could taste it, my mother-in-law's nurse called me out of nowhere. A woman I barely knew, who'd only ever spoken to me in brief, hospitable hallway interactions. She said quietly, "I need to ask you something. Did Mark ever tell you where he really went during his mother's last chemo cycle?" My stomach dropped so hard I swear I heard it hit the floor. "What do you mean, really?" I whispered. "He said he couldn't make her final appointment because of a business trip, but he wasn't on a business trip." Silence expanded between us like smoke. "Where was he?" I finally asked. The nurse hesitated. It wasn't nosy hesitation, it was protective hesitation. She wasn't trying to gossip. She was trying not to destroy me. "I saw him at the Westin Hotel downtown," she said, "with a woman." I didn't say anything because it wasn't my place, but your mother-in-law knew, and just like that, everything shifted. This wasn't just cheating. This was betrayal layered over betrayal, cheating while his mother was dying. Cheating while I was sitting in waiting rooms crying into vending machine coffee. Cheating while I held her hand through radiation treatments. I sat on the edge of the bed after that call, staring at the wall like it might reveal something if I stared long enough. I wanted to scream. But screaming wouldn't make any of it untrue. So I did what women do when we're trying to hold ourselves together. I cleaned the kitchen at midnight. I wiped counters and loaded the dishwasher and sorted mail while my brain imploded silently. The nurse's call forced me to stop pretending. And once you stop pretending, everything starts making sense way too fast. He didn't just miss appointments. He didn't just dodge questions. He was relieved at the funeral. Not sad beloved, free relieved. A man who'd been terrified someone else might expose his secret now had one less witness. His mother's last words to me, "Whatever happens, I'll make sure you're okay," hit differently after that, because suddenly it wasn't emotional comfort. It was tactical assurance. And then she did something I didn't know about until the reading. She changed her estate documents, added a clause, updated distribution, prepared for war from beyond the grave. Before she died, she even asked me a strange question. "What would you do if Mark hurt you in a way you couldn't forgive?" I laughed then. I don't laugh now at her funeral, when he was texting instead of mourning. I should have trusted my instincts. Because people don't text logistics during funerals, they text secrets. And now I know who he was texting that day, thanks to the pie report his mother commissioned behind his back. But that part comes later. By the time the funeral ended, the whispers were already circulating. Family members asking subtle questions. His sister whispered to me that he's been acting weird for months. His aunt told me his mother didn't miss much. None of us knew the inheritance clause existed yet, but she did, and she'd spent months preparing the terrain. The cheating didn't kill her, but she refused to let it bury me. When the lawyer revealed that she not only suspected the affair but investigated it, documented it, and planned to weaponize it, that was the moment Mark finally snapped and the real fight began. When the lawyer finished reading the clause aloud, the room felt like it lost oxygen. No one spoke. No one even breathed loudly. It was the kind of silence that doesn't settle. It crackles. It tastes like static. It begs for someone to deny something. Mark didn't deny anything at first. He just stared straight ahead like a man waiting for a referee to reverse a bad call in slow motion. His jaw flexed. His left hand twitched against the arm of his chair. His sister Lauren looked at him like she'd just realized her brother was a stranger. The lawyer cleared his throat. "As you are all aware, Mrs. Falster held controlling interest in the family trust and designated heirship. under her updated documents, any suspicion of marital infidelity suspicion, Mark barked, slamming his palm against the table hard enough to rattle the water glasses. Suspicion isn't evidence. Suspicion doesn't change legal inheritances. The lawyer didn't flinch. God bless attorneys who deal with entitled men for a living. Correct. Which is why your mother established a mechanism to determine whether the clause should be triggered. He slid a small mahogany box toward the center of the table, like it was a bomb that hadn't gone off yet. Inside are materials your mother prepared prior to her passing. If the executor deems the investigation reasonable, the estate is provisionally frozen until the matter is resolved. I felt sick with disbelief. Mark didn't react with shock. That was the first thing that struck me. Not shock, not confusion, not even outrage at the concepts. His face twisted into pure strategy, the look of a man calculating his escape route. Lauren whispered, "Jesus, Mom, what did you know?" Before the lawyer opened the box, he asked if we had questions. Mark had plenty. They all sounded like a guilty man auditioning to be innocent. This is insane. She was manipulated. She's not even here to defend her claims. She hated the idea of divorce. Ask anyone. This is defamation. Lauren cut him off. She adored marriage, not cheating. It was the first time I'd ever heard someone in his family say it out loud. And it landed. The lawyer opened the box. Inside was a sealed envelope, a USB drive, and a small key. The envelope was addressed to the executor. The USB was labeled in his mother's elegant handwriting. If clause triggered, the key. Number. Label, no explanation, just one more secret dangling like bait. He opened the envelope first and skimmed for several seconds. His expression went from neutral gives, curious, gives resigned. Your mother hired a licensed private investigator 6 months before her passing. He said calmly, "Mr. Foster, you were under surveillance for approximately 4 months. For months." Mark laughed, one short, sharp bark of disbelief. She was dying. Why would she waste money on something like that? The lawyer didn't even blink. She considered it an investment in clarity. Then he plugged in the USB. If Section 3 was emotional suspicion, Section 4 became forensic confirmation. The first file was a spreadsheet, dates, times, locations, all logged in sickening detail. His so-called late meetings lined up perfectly, with hotel stays, bar tabs, and credit card transactions. The second file was a PDF from the PI photographs, timelines, surveillance logs, even a screenshot of Mark kissing a woman in the lobby of the Westin during the same week I was taking his mother to chemo. The room collectively inhaled. Mark stood up so fast his chair toppled. "This is illegal. This is stalking. She had no right to, actually." The lawyer cut in. "She did. Married spouses have standing for PI surveillance, and as trustee, she had fiduciary interest in determining moral conduct related to the estate." Translation: his mom was a ruthless strategist who played by the rules she needed to. Then came the scroll-stopping midsection twist. There was a third folder labeled Paternity Inquiry. My brain short-circuited. Not once in all those years had I ever considered the possibility of a child. The lawyer hesitated before opening it, glancing at me and Lauren like he was silently offering us a chance to back out. We didn't. Inside were emails between the PI and a clinic, DNA analysis requests, correspondence about minor child female, and then the part that made my skin crawl, a letter from the mistress asking for discretion due to family circumstances. I felt like someone had cracked my ribs open and replaced my heart with ice water. A child. He didn't just cheat, he lied on a generational scale. No wonder his mother added the clause. Loyalty wasn't just sentimental to her. It was structural. The lawyer closed the folder gently, like it was a bum with a half-cut wire. "This alone meets the threshold for the clause," he said quietly. "But your mother left further instructions." That's when he slid a second envelope across the table, this one addressed in bold handwriting. To be opened in presence of Mark, his wife, and Lauren only. Mark looked like he wanted to bolt. Instead he tried bargaining. Angry men always try bargaining before breaking. "This doesn't prove anything," he muttered. "It's all circumstantial." Lauren turned to him, voice trembling but lethal. "Circumstantial affairs don't last 3 years. Mark," he froze. 3 years. She said it with certainty. Not speculation. Not accusation. Certainty. "How did you?" he started. "Because she told me," Lauren whispered. "Mom told me before she died." She begged me to watch you. I thought she was paranoid. Turns out she was just right. He didn't speak after that. The lawyer opened the second envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter on thick stationery. No copies, no digital scans. Old school revenge. It was addressed to me, not to Mark, not to Lauren, to me. At the top, in her perfectly neat cursive, she wrote, "If you're reading this, then the truth has finally done what I could not." I swallowed hard. The words blurred for a second before snapping back into focus. She detailed everything she saw, suspected, confirmed. She apologized for tolerating it too long. And then she wrote, "This family built wealth through discipline. My son squandered loyalty through entitlement. One of these deserves protection. The other does not." And then the kicker, "You are entitled to dignity, not charity. I intend for the inheritance to be the former." When I reached the end, I realized my hands were shaking. Mark wasn't shaking. He was seething. And guilt mixed with panic create a special kind of rage. He slammed both hands on the table and shouted, "You don't get to take my life because my mother wrote a soap opera." But the truth was, the soap opera wasn't hers. It was his. The lawyer hadn't even told us the final part yet, the part his mother saved for last. And that was the detail that didn't just hurt him. It destroyed him. That sealed envelope with my name on it felt heavier than the entire attic. I sat there on the splintered floor, dust choking the air, my heart thundering like I'd just sprinted a mile. It didn't make sense. Why would Leo keep a letter addressed to me and never give it to me? Why hide it in a taped shoebox under Christmas decorations like some cursed relic? My fingers trembled as I slit it open. The paper crackled, old, yellowed, like it had been written years ago, and immediately something felt off. The handwriting wasn't Leo's. It wasn't messy or rushed or goofy like his sticky notes on the fridge. It was neat, almost clinical. The first line punched the air out of me. "Mrs. Halley, I am writing regarding your husband's request for full identity suppression and psychological distancing." Identity suppress what? I blinked, reading it again like maybe I hallucinated. The sentence, I kept going. At this time, he's insistent that his past remains undisclosed to his spouse for reasons of emotional safety and personal survival. Spouse, emotional safety, survival. I couldn't breathe. I expected cheating. I expected a mistress, a secret child, a second family. But this was something else entirely, something bigger, older, and so much darker. The next paragraph, twisted, the knife. Mr. Halley was not attempting deceit out of malice, but out of trauma. His former identity, household, and family of origin pose significant emotional threat to him. Until he feels safe, disclosure may not be possible. Former identity, family of origin, emotional threat. My brain short-circuited. Who was I married to? Because the man I knew, the man who made pancakes on Saturdays and kissed me between bites and syrup, didn't sound like someone who needed to run from his own name. Then came the line that felt like a slap. His legal name prior to reissuance was Miles Rhodes. Miles, not Leo, and Rhodes, not Halley. I read it 3 times, each pass rewriting my marriage in real time. I suddenly saw flashes, how jumpy he got when unknown numbers called, how he avoided family events, how he never once mentioned childhood beyond age 15. We'd been together 7 years and somehow the first 15 of his life were deleted. The letter continued. Your husband has spent years recovering from an environment of coercion, financial control, and interpersonal violence. His decision to sever from that system was not spontaneous but strategic. Coercion, violence, system. This wasn't cheating. This was an escape. I felt nauseous because for weeks I'd been convinced I was the victim, the ignored wife, the unwanted spouse, the woman left out of her own narrative. But reading that letter made me realize Leah wasn't shutting me out to hurt me. He was shutting out the version of himself that almost destroyed him. Then the final paragraph. If disclosure occurs, it must be on his terms. Any forced revelation may dies. If you are reading this without his consent, it is imperative that you approach him gently. He is not hiding a betrayal, but a war. My throat burned. Hot tears flooded down my cheeks, soaking the old paper. I swear I felt the weight of how wrong I'd been, how small my suspicions were compared to the monsters chasing him through his adulthood. I folded the letter back into the envelope with shaking hands. I didn't know whether to scream, or hug him, or demand answers, or apologize. 7 years of marriage, and I had never even considered the possibility that Leo's demons didn't have high heels or perfume, they wore his last name. The attic door creaked. I looked up, and there he was, leaning against the frame, not angry, not defensive, not caught, just tired, more tired than I'd ever seen. He didn't look at the letters. He didn't look at the box. He looked at the envelope in my lap, the one with my name, the one he never meant for me to see. His voice broke first. I wanted to tell you. God, I wanted to so many times. I swallowed hard. Then why didn't you? He sat down slowly, like his bones hurt, because Leo is the man you fell in love with. Miles is the man I had to bury. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The air felt thick with ghosts and guilt and 7 years of love that suddenly had more weight than I knew what to do with. I thought you were cheating, I whispered, ashamed of how small it sounded. He laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was tragic. I was hiding, not straying. I found the letters. I said, I know. He nodded. Miles has a mother. She wants me back. And a brother who thinks I owe him something. If they knew my new name, my new life, he shook his head. Eyes shining, they'd take it. Take me, take us, take the life we built like it was never his to begin with. The attic didn't feel dusty anymore. It felt holy, sacred, like the battlefield where marriage either collapses or transforms. I slid closer. Not because I understood everything, but because for the first time I understood enough. He whispered. I didn't hide her. I hid myself, and I believed him. If you were in my shoes, would you forgive him? Drop your answer below. I'm curious how many kind people would stay versus walk.